2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the AGO. My name is Stefan Yost. I'm the Michael and Sonia Kerner Director and CEO of the Art Gallery of Ontario. We like to begin our events by acknowledging that the AGO is located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Mississauga of the New Credit, and it has been home to many Indigenous people, including the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and Seneca people through time. There's been a great deal of interest in today's event with over 5,000 people are currently watching, so I just want to welcome everyone. We'll be opening the exhibition Studio 54 quite soon, hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so. It's been beautifully curated and installed by Julian Cox, and it's a partner with our good friends at the Brooklyn Museum. I want to take this moment to thank everybody who's joined us. If you're one of AGO's 250,000 members or annual pass holders, thank you. You really make a difference for us. I also want to make sure that you know that the AGO is here for you, particularly if you have kids. We offer 3 live programs. If your kids are at home every day for free, 3 times a day, just go to ago.ca and we'll take care of your kids. Just trying to help you get through this pandemic. Today, it's a great pleasure to have André Leon Talley and Diane von Furstenberg joining us. André is an American fashion journalist, editor, creative director, and writer. He recently wrote a really compelling autobiography called The Chiffon Trenches, and I confess, I read it twice. It's really good and it's still available. He was also affiliated with Vogue for many years as a creative director. Diane von Furstenberg is a preeminent fashion designer. Her company operates in over 70 countries, and she's also a philanthropist. If you've enjoyed the High Line in New York City, this wonderful park, she had a great deal to make sure that that happened for all of us. She has a new book out called Own It, and we're going to carry both books at the AGO gift shop. So when you see the exhibition, you should come and purchase those books. Today, they're going to be in conversation about an amazing nightclub, Studio 54. It was open in New York City for 33 months, from April 1977 to February of 1980. I hope, again, you come and see the show. It's great to have 2 people who were key to the success of that nightclub and who can share their experiences with us today. So welcome, Diane, and welcome, André.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We thought we would start by simply having show some images, and maybe we could use that as the jumping point for the conversation. So I'm going to just do a little share my screen here. You see that all right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Studio 54, an incredible nightclub, jammed-packed. What was your experiences upon just entering it? What do these images kind of make you feel when you see them?
When you think Studio 54, especially from the outside, it was all about how you get in, you know? I guess that one of the attraction was like, will they let you in, you know? And in order to get in, you know, you had Martin, I think his name was, and he would let people, it was like the doorman. And then you had Steve Rubel, one of the founders, who would say yes or no. And we were just like animals waiting to get in.
Does that describe your experience, André?
No, because first of all, I was there when Studio 54 opened that night. And unfortunately, I was there when it closed. But my experience, and also with Diane, is because we knew Steve. We were allowed to go past the VIP ropes. We did not have to stand in that crowd. We get out of the car and be ushered in. They would see us and recognize us. So we were not in that crowd. We bypassed it. And then we always had the luck to be in that group of people who were very important in New York, Halston and Bianca and all of that. So I never had to stand in that crowd, thank goodness.
Well, there was the reason I'm talking about it, because the anticipation of going in was part of the thing. And then when you finally was let in, there was this big alley, like this big corridor with mirror, and you just went in, you know, and you kind of made an entrance. And then you got into this, you know, Studio 54 was a CBS recording studio. So it was very large and big, and then you heard the music, and then you were in, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that part of going into Studio 54 was going in.
The sense of arrival, that becoming.
Yes,
okay? Yeah.
exactly. And by the time you went out, you didn't remember anything.
How long did one stay there? 4, 5, 6 hours, or?
Okay, Andre, I'll let you speak first.
I stayed until most often I stay until closing time, especially after the first year. I would stay until closing time, but you really could stay 1 hour, 2 hours. I remember going there with you, Diane. I don't think you stayed 4 hours or 5 hours. You'd go home.
No, I never stayed that long.
No.
I mean, for me, it was going in, showing off, dancing, having a beer, and leaving.
Can you share your thoughts about?
You drank beer? Did you drink beer?
I did. I mean, I love the idea. I mean, my thing about Studio 54, you know, I was a young woman. I was separated. I had 2 children and my mother at home. And I would, you know, eat at home and all of that. And then when it got to be 11:30, 12 o'clock, I would put my cowboy boots and I would drive my car. And there was a garage right next to the studio on 54th Street, and I would park my car and I would walk in. And for some reason, the idea of walking in with cowboy boots made me feel like, you know, I was a cowboy or something. So for me, it was all linked into that kind of a fantasy. And then of course you went in and you saw friends and like that.
And can you talk a little bit about Steve Rubell? Here we have 2 photographs of him, one with Elizabeth Taylor, one with Michael Jackson. He was choreographing much of the theatrical, the whole event. What was your sense?
He was a very nice man. I really liked Steve a lot. I think he loved this whole magical moment that he had created with his partner, Ian Schrager. Yep. And he lived for this. He lived to be next to Elizabeth Taylor when she was married to the Senator, Mr. Warner in Virginia. This is Elizabeth Taylor in her life as a senator's wife, not as the glamorous Liz Taylor of Hollywood. And then, you know, Michael Jackson comes in, but not just these people. They're all people from all over the world. He would greet the famous people all over the world. And also, Diane is making very little of her impact at Studio 54 because she was also part of the world of the famous people, the celebrities from New York. And so she had her entree after she got through the corridor, there's to be a banquet for her. And I sat on the banquet with her. She does not remember this because she just said, you forget everything. She just said, you forget everything. But she was very much a part of the moment of 54. Oh.
Fashion is key, right? So this is an installation shot in the AGO.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
So we thought we might want to put this up, Andre, for you to talk about this work a little bit.
Okay, well, first of all, I see so many Norma Kamali pieces there, but I don't see a DVF piece. But this beautiful parachute coat to the floor is by Norma Kamali.
And Norma Kamali was living at the time with Ian Schrager, who was Steve Rubell's partner.
Absolutely. And this white puffer coat here is Norma Kamali. This is her contemporary version, but she designed the original sleeping bag coat in 1977 when 54 opened. I had the blue one. I was one of the first ones to be given a coat by Norma. She's a dear friend of mine. And I still have it in my garage in North Carolina, but I have 3 red ones now for right now. But how did Norma become to design a sleeping bag coat? She went on a weekend trip camping with a friend of hers, Mr. Carey, who was the window designer at Henri Bendel, this store on Fifth Avenue. And
that's right, Bob Carey.
Bob Carey. And she was in a sleeping bag. She had to get up and go to the bathroom in the woods. And she had to crawl out of the sleeping bag. And she just realized that the sleeping bag could be turned into a coat. And she made this great coat, and it's the best coat. And there it is in silver. And that, by the way, her parachutes were made from real vintage silk parachute fabric. And when I first met Norma Kamali, by the way, Norma Kamali never went to Studio 54. She was with Ian, but she never went to 54. And if she did, she designed costumes for Grace Jones, but she was not sitting on a banquette or dancing in 50.
That's right. That's right.
So this parachute was made from antique silk parachute, recycled parachutes from the war, and she made the most extraordinary clothes from these things.
They're really beautiful. They're really extraordinary.
Oh, who's that?
This is
Antonio drawing. Antonio. Andre, that's not me.
No,
I never looked like that.
Sterling.
But it's a drawing by Antonio Lopez.
exactly,
Yeah.
and who was doing things for Alvin Ailey.
Yes.
Yes, and I think that's Sterling. Remember
Sterling? Sterling
Yeah,
St.
who
John?
was dancing all the time. Yeah,
Beautiful drawings.
yeah, beautiful.
A sketchbook here that's in the show.
That's Antonio's. Oh, that's fantastic. Wow, you got a great show.
Oh, we'll send you the catalog, and we'd love to have you visit, but the border's not open.
Catalog.
Yeah.
Send me the catalog and invite me. I love you got Antonio's diaries.
Yeah.
How modern those diaries are. And who kept them? You went to his boyfriend and got these diaries?
Yeah, I don't know where the curator got them from. But,
That came from the Brooklyn Museum.
yeah.
Oh, you saw this show at the Brooklyn Museum?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they originated it. They did a really fantastic job. And when I heard that it was available, we snagged it there. But it's also the Alvin Ailey Dance Company. So there's these.
Yeah.
What I love here is the Friends with Personal Style. In the middle, there's a photograph of a bunch of men, and it's Friends with Personal Style. And this might be a setup of your book, Diane. It's the Own It book. Tell us a little bit about what that book's about.
Oh, during COVID, I made this little book called I don't know where the screen is.
Right there.
It's called Own It: The Secret to Life. And it's, if you own your imperfection, they become your asset. If you own your vulnerability, it becomes your strength. And it's words, and it's actually like a little dictionary. And it's coming out on March 8th for International Women's Day.
Great. Good. Because I just love the little thing there about personal style. And so much of personal style is owning it. This is
Owning it, you could apply to anything. This is Pat Cleveland.
Pat Cleveland. Andre, what would you say about
Amazing. Pat Cleveland loved to dance, and she was just like a whirling dervish. And obviously, this is Pat Cleveland. She's fanciful, she's magic. And she dances when she models. She can be on a runway, and suddenly she just starts walking, and she turns into this vortex of energy and light, and she's a marvelous spirit.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she's really, and she loved at the time, she loved being Josephine Baker. Yeah. And I remember my boyfriend was then Barry Diller, he's now my husband. And I used to beg him to do the store, to hire Pat Cleveland and do Josephine Baker.
Pat Cleveland, very, very important model from the 19th.
She's wearing a Halston dress here.
Yes.
No, that's a Zonda Rhodes dress.
Zonda Rhodes.
Although
we'll come to Halston.
I love this. I love your presentation, Stefan. It's great.
Just the details here of this dress, and then seeing the photographs of how it really comes alive when it's worn. Right?
Well, it says in the copy, it says Halston.
Wearing Zonda to Halston.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There. Well, we'll get to Halston because I want to. Halston, you guys predicted right where we're going. So here we have Halston and Liza Minnelli. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Halston, because when I went through the exhibition for the first time, seeing his dresses, they're impossibly elegant. They're like, it really made me think of a Brancusi sculpture. Just couldn't be more elegant than that. And I didn't realize it until I saw them in the show, how truly what a genius he was. Tell us a little bit more about him. Many of our audience are under 30, right? So what do they need to know about Halston?
Well, if you talk about Studio 54, actually, when Andre and I first walked into the Studio 54, it hadn't opened yet. Oh. And we were all at Halston's house for Bianca Jagger's birthday. There was a dinner party. And then after we finished eating, Holston told us, okay, for dessert, we are all going to this new place. And we all went into the Studio 54 for the first time. And Bianca made an entrance on a white horse.
Yes.
With a red Halston dress.
That's right.
Lady Godiva in red. Halston was sort of like the Duke or the Prince of 54. He was like Steve's go-to New York designer, and Halston's entire family, Liza Minnelli. I think right behind Halston might be Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
I mean, he just had a whole family that always was surrounding him on the banquettes. Halston didn't do much dancing. He just had a cigarette in one hand, and he just sat there and observed. And I mean, Dan Kempner, everyone loved Halston, and he was just always a fixture at 54. And the ladies loved his clothes. And Bianca loved his clothes. There's Liza Minnelli in a Halston jumpsuit, probably. There's Liza Minnelli, and there's a Liza Minnelli outfit in your exhibition.
What makes Halston so extraordinary? How do you describe him in the history of fashion?
The ultimate minimalist. The ultimate minimalist, as you described, impossibly elegant. Elegance is refusal. He pared down. He just chiseled it down like a Brancusi bird in flight. He just chiseled away detail, extravagance. It's all about the line, simplicity, the personality of the wearer becomes more important than the ornamental or decorative effects of a dress. So his conceits are very traditional. Kimonos, caftans, beautiful clothes, simplicity of fabric. Just amazing. It was unseen. I mean, he was like a minimalist. He believed in minimalism, and it was like a Brancusi sculpture.
And he was really the quintessential American design. You know, he was the young American designer at the time. You know, there was also Giorgio Sant'Angelo, and Halston was the Prince of New York, as Andre is saying.
Yeah.
Great photographs. Here, the Grace Jones were there. Grace Jones in 78. The dramatic diva performing. She did solo performances. And of course, Andy Warhol loved 54. He was always there to look at the way he's dressed with his little camera. And,
right?
Yeah.
And on the other picture is Olivia Newton-John. And it was actually the opening of it wasn't my husband then, but my husband's movie, Grease.
I didn't make that connection till now.
Yeah.
And do you remember the opening evening?
I do actually. And yeah, I do remember. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't in New York. I'd moved to Paris by then.
Okay.
And I was living in Paris, and Grace Jones often came to Paris. And Grace Jones, I met Grace Jones through Steve Rubell, actually, when Steve had a little club in Queens, and Grace had her first disco album, and it was called I Need a Man. And he hired 2 buses and took us to Queens, Andy Warhol and the entire factory, went to this little tiny, tiny club, some undescribable club in Queens. This is how I first met him. He was on a bus with Grace, and Grace went out there and lip sync to this album. And then, you know, Grace is the kind of person, she was jumping on a table in Paris at the Club Set, this gay club called Club Set. She jumped on a table wearing no underwear and started dancing. She was just that dramatic. And
she married a Frenchman.
She still is very dramatic, and she's very talented, and she has a beautiful documentary 3 years ago called Grace. You know, her parents were ministers in the Caribbean, and she just broke away from that mold of that very conservative family. I'll tell you a story about Grace. Once Carl asked Grace to sing for him at the Red Cross Ball in Monaco. So of course he sent her the ticket from New York. She came on the Concorde. The Concorde landed in Paris at about 10:45 at night, and then we had to wait till 3 o'clock in the morning for her to get on another plane to come to Monaco. And we were sitting there waiting for the rehearse for the ball the next day. And it was sort of cold and freezing. And Grace came in very, very late. Carl was upset, and I'm sitting there just kind of tired, waiting for Grace, you know, to be the ambassador between Grace and Carl. And she gets up on stage and she says, "Would you please hand me my gloves?" Well, the gloves were like Fendi gloves, gauntlet gloves, you know, very extravagant. I said, "Grace, why do you need your gloves?" She said, "For attitude." So she started singing because she needed the gloves to give her the attitude. And look at Andy.
She had a lot of attitude.
Look at the way Andy's looking at her. He adores her. Look at Andy. Notice the glow in his eyes. Look at her.
He's jealous.
Oh, what's the model? I'm not jealous. I adore Grace.
Oh, he is. Yeah.
Oh, he's in awe of her energy. Andy is in awe of her spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. She has it. She has it.
Oh, here it is. It's that same night. It's that same night. It is the night of the, you see, Grease premiere party. It's the same night. I remember very, very well that night. It was a great movie and I had a great time. And I was wearing a big jacket with splash painting on it. And yeah.
It was a little Jackson Pollock, the painting.
Well, yes, kind of. I mean, the feeling, yeah.
That energy.
Oh, and this is at sitting on the banquette. On my right is Ira Galan. Ira Galan was at first he was a famous hairdresser. He did all the beautiful hairdo for the model Verushka. And then from being a hairdresser, he became a photographer. And actually, he photographed me for the cover interview in 1976. So that's how we became friends. And on my other side is a French-Chilean friend of mine called Cédric Lopez.
And Diane, explain, look at your legs in those beautiful stockings. What on earth are you doing with those legs? Your legs, your signature.
Okay, so I will tell you a fun story about this picture, because this picture actually has been shown around a lot. And Tom Ford, for some reason, absolutely loves this picture. And one day he was with a journalist and he was talking, and he talked about me in that picture, and he said, you know, Diane is the only person I know who can cross her legs twice. And then he imitated to do it, and then his back got stuck and he couldn't move. So
well, he's a man. First of all, he's a man.
Every time I see this picture, I think of that story.
It's a fantastic image. It really is. And I think it's your eyes and your legs together. It's really beautiful.
I think the legs more than the eyes, no?
Yeah.
The legs.
And the stockings. How about the stockings?
But that's when you were very chic and wearing Charles Jourdain shoes all the time. You used to wear Charles Jourdain ankle strap shoes. And you went to Marisa Berenson's wedding with these kind of stockings on. And a Norma Kamali skirt. A Norma Kamali red skirt with a black maillot de bain.
That's right. Right.
There we go, back to Norma Kamali. That's how the power of Norma Kamali at Marisa Berenson's wedding. Thank you.
Oh, look what it says here. The party was for my husband at the time, book The Power Look, and Ira Galan and Cédric Lopez.
Well, that's the book. I have to say, where's The Power Look here? That's the book. That's the title of the book. Oh, Beth Ann, Daniela, and Stephen Barrows. I was not here because I was still in Paris going to Paloma Picasso's wedding, but were you at that party, Diane? I don't know.
Valentina's birthday.
Probably, I don't know, 78, probably.
Whose birthday?
Valentino.
No, I was in Paris.
Stephen Barrow, we have to talk. I thought Stephen Barrow was the most talented, designer in New York at the time, for me, because it was, for me, coming from Europe, it was so different, and it was very much about a certain attitude, and and so Stephen Barrows actually had a big influence on me. He and Giorgio Sant'Angelo were the ones that I absolutely adored when I came to New York.
He passed away early?
No,
alive. He's alive.
He's alive.
He's alive, and he's in New York, and he's
my God.
Yeah.
All right. And is he's still designing?
He's probably
he still designs.
He's probably the only one who is still alive, by the way. What is this?
This is makeup artist.
What is
the
this?
one person in the picture is Carolyn Herrera. Let's talk about Carolyn Herrera.
All right.
Because she still exists. I don't know these other people. Tony.
No, I do. Sandy Lidner, she was a makeup artist.
Is she still alive?
No, yes, she is. She was the girlfriend of Gia. And Tony Tucci, I don't know who that is. And that's it. But Carolina Herrera had just appeared in New York, and she looked like Evita Peron. And again, I was telling Barry that he should make a movie and hire her as Evita Peron. She then became a designer. She wasn't a designer yet at that time.
This is Grace Jones. You were talking about the performative aspect of Grace.
Look at that body. Yeah. Yeah. She's fantastic, Grace Jones. She's like this beautiful, gorgeous animal.
And this is the only time Norma came to 54 because she had to put the costume on Grace nude. Norma designed that costume on Grace's body.
Wow.
Backstage.
That is Naomi Sims, I think.
No, it's not.
Oh, no, Amina.
Seems like there's such like the space for performance where people who are wearing fat.
Well, it was a theater. I mean, It was a recording studio. So there was this incredible stage. And part of the whole drama of Studio 54 was that they always had this incredible animation. There was, at some point, there was a moon that would come down with a cocaine spoon. Yeah.
We have a big replica of it in the exhibition.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the really wonderful things is the lighting designer for the AGO, Paul, was one of the lighting designers at Studio 54. So he had a career in New York, and then he moved back to Canada, and he's done the lighting for this exhibition. So the lighting is really beautiful, how it all moves. You mentioned Jerry Hall.
Yeah, Jerry Hall. At the time, she was really young. I remember when she first appeared in New York, she did my show. And I remember this long, skinny thing, gorgeous, with a big Texan accent. And she was, I had never seen anything so long and so tall and so beautiful.
Yeah, she's stunning here. She's iconic for that kind of 70s look here.
Yeah, she is iconic, actually.
And let's see, what is she wearing? Do you know?
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
So our prime minister is Justin Trudeau.
That's where I met her. I remember meeting her at Studio 54. She was at the time, she was so beautiful. And she had these incredible blue eyes. And I remember her so well. She was so beautiful. She was really gorgeous. And a few years ago, I met your prime minister, her son, and we were at a conference and he was speaking and he looked so much like his mom, and I just couldn't help it. So I introduced myself and I said, I need to kiss you because I knew your mother and you're just like her.
Yeah. Well, she raised a good family here. So.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is just the last image, because then we can kind of divide. We can keep on chatting, or we can take questions. There's lots of questions from people.
Well, that's my painting, actually. That belongs to me, that painting.
This does? Oh.
Yeah,
well,
yeah. I lent it to the exhibition.
Thank you.
And it's Andy Warhol who took the tickets to get in. Of course, Andre and I never got a ticket, but Andy gave me that.
I could just stop sharing here so we can see each other kind of all full screen here again. I do wanted to just maybe chat about a couple things. Let's first talk about, AIDS happened after Studio 54, right? And obviously this extraordinary moment of American creativity in music and in fashion and design and art. And it was very interrupted. pretty dramatically in the years afterwards.
Well, New York at the time was very dangerous, and it was very cheap, really cheap. So as a result, a lot of creative people lived in New York. I mean, it was for me who had come from Europe, it was this extraordinary, Babylon of creativity where there was so many things going on and life was so cheap. I mean, I remember I could organize a brunch, go to the supermarket, and for $50 I could have 20 people for lunch.
Yeah. No longer the case, right?
No, I don't think I've been to the supermarket since. No, I'm joking.
And André, when I was reading your book, The Chiffon Trenches, you're pretty direct about kind of racism in America and the fashion world, etc. And just tell me a little bit about how, because when I look at pictures of Studio 54, it seems quite diverse. There's Grace Jones and you're there and etc. Can you talk a little bit about race during that period and just
race in terms of what? Studio 54?
Yeah.
Everyone who got into 54, there was no sense of racism in Studio 54. It was a very democratic and it's a very liberating place. People went there to feel liberated and celebrated music and style and fashion.
Truly, I mean, the discrimination about Studio 54 is if you looked good. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's your looks that got you in. Or obviously if you were famous, but even sometimes people were famous, but they didn't know, it was really about, there was definitely discrimination. There was definitely an elitism about it, but it was about looking hot. And it was also a time of enormous liberation, a time of enormous sexual liberation. Everything was allowed, everything was, for me, as a woman, there was liberation, sex was completely open, we didn't have AIDS, we had just invented the pill. This was the time, that open space between the invention of pill and AIDS, and therefore enormous sexual liberation, an enormous sense of sexual aroma all around the city.
There was a moment in your book, André, you said people went to Studio 54 and anybody could dance with anybody, or I'm paraphrasing there.
Because people forget, as John said, you've got it and then you forgot where you were. It was just a moment of happiness. People danced alone. People were just dancing. I'll never forget, and Tipner got up on a speaker and started dancing in a Saint Laurent couture dress. And she was a woman of a certain age and she climbed up on a big speaker and started dancing by herself. It was just a liberating moment in the middle of a week or a celebration, or Valentino had a party or someone had a party, you just went there and you just felt good. You didn't go there to feel bad. You just went there and you came home and you were tired. You were exhausted from being at 54.
Well, the truth, if you want me to describe what Studio 54 was, it was the best pickup place in the world. People went to Studio 54 to pick up. Yeah. And because of the selection, the pickup was very, very, how do you say? Productive. No, not productive, but anyway. But it was really a pickup place. And no matter what you did in New York, if you went to dinner, if you went there, somehow you would stop by and you would check it out and check the scene. And that's it. But it was really a pickup place. It was, a marketplace.
Sure. So I'm just starting to look at the questions, and there's a lot of them. And people would love, several people are asking about your iconic wrap dress, and they want you to talk about it, but also for André to talk about it.
Go ahead.
Well, I was born in Belgium, and at the age of 19, I think, after university, 20, I went to Paris. And for a few months, I worked for a photographer's agent. And there I learned, he was the hot photographer, the hot agent, and I worked for him. And there I I was exposed for the first time to the world of fashion on the side of photographer, makeup, model, magazine, advertising agency. And then I met an Italian man who said to me, come and work with me in Italy. I have a plant there. I have a printing plant, and I will show you the other side of fashion, where it all happens. So I went to Como, Italy, which was the center of silk. You know, it was the end of the Silk Road that starts in China and that goes to Turkey, blah, 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 and Venice, and then Como. And there, so there I met this man, and I learned everything about printing and everything about, you know, all of that, and jersey and this. And then I wasn't sure that I was interested. I wasn't sure of anything. I had met, when I was in college, Prince Egon Furstenberg, and he was, and we had, we had a romance together. We fell in love. So he went to New York to work, to do a training program in a bank, and he asked me to come to New York to visit him. So as a young European girl, I came to New York to visit my boyfriend, who was a young Austro-Italian prince. And of course, in New York, everybody loved him. He was so good looking, he was rich, he was a prince. Every girl wanted to marry him. And I arrived there and they all looked at me, who is this girl? And that's how I was exposed to all these young designers, Halston, Giorgio Sant'Angelo, Stephen Burrows. And I saw these clothes that were so different than any clothes that I had seen that were in Europe at the time. So I stayed there for about 2 months, and then I had to go home. So I went to go home back to the factory in Italy. And all of a sudden, because of what I had seen in New York, I looked at the factory, I looked at the jersey, I looked at the printed, and I thought to myself, ooh, I can do something from that factory. And that's when I designed my first dress, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it happened.
Fantastic. It's so global, the store, right? You know, it's just so, it's linking these different parts.
But it's global, but it's an American dream, because then I married my prince. I came to New York as a princess with a big suitcase full of little dresses. And I went to see Mrs. Vreeland, who was the big doyenne of fashion.
Yes, right.
And nobody really paid attention to my dresses before. And she looked at me, and she had a rack. I put all the dresses on the rack, and she had 2 young girls in that office, Lulu de la Falaise and Pat Cleveland. And they started to try the dresses on. I was so shy. I was so intimidated. And she just went crazy. She said, this is genius. This is great. And that's how I began. And then I met André. So I should talk about—
How did you guys meet?
Okay, André, you want to talk about it?
You talk. You're good.
Okay, so André was at the time working for Interview magazine, correct, André?
Andy Warhol, yes.
Andy Warhol. And I had a party in my Park Avenue apartment, and André was downstairs, and he was taking pictures for Andy Warhol, and he was wearing a little orange cape, or at least I remember it being a gold and orange cape. And that's my first image of this incredibly handsome, tall Black man. And he and I became very, very good friends. He then he worked for Mrs. Vreeland, and then he worked for Women's Wear Daily. And he was sent to Paris to become the Paris correspondent of Women's Wear Daily. And in Paris, he created an amazing sensation. This beautiful, handsome, tall Black man, so elegant. And I remember he went to Paris in Paris, when you went to dinner at Maxime's, on Friday night, it was black tie. and he went to this black tie dinner, and he wore a cashmere robe. And that was a big whatever, you know. And then Andre and I, we became very good friends. I would visit Paris then as a foreigner. I was like a glorified tourist in Paris. And I would stay at the Plaza Athénée, and Andre would come and visit me, and we would have tea in the lobby. And I was telling Andre, we pretend you are an African king. And we became very, very, very close, and have been close ever since.
True, absolutely true, every word.
Those long-term friendships.
Every word, every word. And I like to say, getting back to Studio 54, that the night, unfortunately, Steve Rubell, you know, wasn't perfect. And he was taking the cash out of the cashier registers from the drinks and putting in the paper bags. So he had to go to be incarcerated. And the night before he was incarcerated, Diane was having a dinner party at her house with Truman Capote, and Steve Rubell was there, and Ian Schrager as well. The night before Steve was to go to jail, Ian and Steve were in your apartment, and Truman Capote was there. I vividly remember. You don't remember?
I actually remember Truman Capote and Steve Rubell in my apartment, but I didn't know it was the night.
It was on the eve of him going to the jailhouse. I vividly remember.
Were you aware at the time what a huge, long-lasting cultural impact this club and what was happening in that club would have? At what point did it kind of go, wow, this is like actually?
Well, I have to say, I wasn't aware of its impact until it was about to close. But the reason that it closed was for so many reasons. But as liberating as it was, as Diane said, it was a hot pickup place. It was a place of sexual freedom. And at one point, it almost became Sodom and Gomorrah, because you literally could go upstairs in the balcony of the,
or downstairs,
or in the basement, and there were people of both sexes in the throes of sexual bliss, not even recognizing if you were passing by them and watching them. Whatever they were on, I don't know. It was probably substances and quaaludes and nitrate, amyl something, whatever, meth, whatever. But this for me was a turning point. When I first saw that, I thought this is going to be the end, because when you have that kind of excessive liberation, it becomes decadent. Yeah. And then, of course, the club closed, and it did have a world impact.
And you know, you said 33 months. I mean, it was such a short time. You know,
yeah. So one of the people said, you were going to say something, Andre, about Caroline Herrera, and I moved the slide. And I just want to make sure
Mrs. Herrera was very, very glamorous. As Diane said, she showed up on the scene, and she was just extraordinary, glamorous, and looked like Evita Peron. And she came from a very, wealthy family in South America with her husband,
Venezuela.
Venezuela, and with her husband, Ronaldo. So, but they love to go out, and she loved Studio 54. And notice she was in a gold lame dress, looking very much like Carole Lombard. I just think she was like the latter-day version of the great actress Carole Lombard, who was married to Clark Gable. And she loved to be out in the clubs at night, and she loved watching people. She noticed the look on her face. She loved being amused by the scene. But everyone did. I knew CC Guest went there. Mrs. Vreeland went there, not often, but Mrs. Vreeland would pass by after dinner with Halston or her dinner gate. High society went there. Drag queens went there. You had the greatest drag queens, Patassa. I don't know whatever happened to Patassa. Patassa was there. All of the Warhol crowd was there. And Diane was there. I came home one summer from Paris, and I was at Diane's house every night for dinner. And she would drive her car, her Mercedes, down to the garage, and we go into 54. And she put those legs on the banquette. She crawled on the banquette, I guess double draping her legs over the banquette. I didn't realize at the time it was her signature moment, her signature dress moment to attract the animals in the jungle. It was just like, oh, okay, whatever. But I really think that it was a great place. And I think that Steve was a great person, and Ian. Ian's still here with us.
And Ian did the book, a beautiful book on Studio 54,
yes.
which I'm sure you have in your bookstore.
And why didn't you put a picture of me and Diane Ross dancing in 54?
I know, it's a great photograph.
You don't have that in your collection?
I didn't have it in my slide deck. So, shame on us. You want to tell us about that a little bit?
No, it's just dancing on the dance floor. The music just tells you to dance. And she was wearing Saint Laurent. She was at Saint Laurent that time, and she was just great. By the way, Mary Wilson died yesterday, the great Mary Wilson, who was one of the co-founders of the Supremes with Diana Ross at 73. And so sad, but that just tells you. But I mean, Diana Ross has always been great style and glamorous. The thing was, you could be glamorous in 54 and no one judged you for your glamour. They embraced it.
So a bunch of people are saying they want to know about the fabric and the clothes you're wearing, Andre. And they want to know also, Diane, what you're looking fabulous. The number of
But Diane looks much more fabulous than I do. And what is that jewelry you're wearing tonight, Diane? I love the jewelry.
You know what it is? It's beetle wings.
Oh,
wow.
Beetle wings. This is very light. It's a friend of mine from India who made those.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Is it Kirat? It's not Kirat, is it?
No, his name is Anut.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's great. When I'm wearing something,
I wore those for you, Andre.
I love them. I'm glad that people ask.
When you are a friend of Andre, it is very important and absolutely indispensable that you are glamorous, you know? So I made an effort tonight.
You made a big effort. And I'm wearing an agbada from Nigeria, from Lagos. I have a friend in Nigeria who makes this. It's a typical dress. It's called an agbada. It's African. And it's a big kaftan. And Diana's made me many kaftans too. And it's made out of wool, like you'd make a suit from it, wool flannel.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So somebody's asking, could Studio 54 exist today? Could there be an equivalent, or is there an equivalent?
No.
No way.
I don't think there's ever been a nightclub like that since. I think many people have tried it. It was a moment. It was everything between the place, but even the place, I think they tried to do it there too. It was a moment in history. It was like a sparkling moment. And it was the height of disco. You know, it was the height of disco. So it was that music and that freedom and that dancing and the studio and the stage. So it was really it was a moment.
Did you guys draw on Studio 54 later? Did you kind of
What do you mean draw?
Like creatively draw on that experience?
No, not me. No, not in my work. No. I mean, maybe, I don't think that Diane was inspired by Studio 54 for her dresses. No.
I mean, my dress was the dress you wore before you went to studio.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. You're both teachers in some ways. You're interested in the next generation. You're releasing a book on Women's Day. I've seen you, Andre, with young people here.
I love coming to your gallery.
You just were really super generous with the public. Again, most of our audiences are in their 20s and 30s.
Yes.
What are some things that you wish somebody had told you when you were that age? What are some things how do you try to guide people? Because I know a lot of people here are quite young.
By listening to what they want to achieve, listening to their dreams and goals. That's one thing. You must listen. You must listen and connect to the individual. Diane, what do you say?
Well, I think that when you get old, actually, you speak, you know? I mean, because when you are old, you have so many stories. I mean, sometimes I just think people must think I'm showing up, you know? So when you are old, it's about using your voice, your experience, your story, your connection in order to help others to become who they want to be, you know? Both Andre and I, we were lucky and privileged that we made our dreams come true. You know, Andre was from North Carolina and he was dreaming of Vogue, he was dreaming of fashion, and he became such an important pillar of fashion. You know, you walk the street with Andre, he's very famous, you know? So it's, he lived his dream. And in my way also, I lived my dream. So when young people come to us, I think it's about sharing that and giving them the confidence and the stories and that's why I wrote Own It. It's like, if you own your imperfection, it become your asset.
There
What
we
is
go.
that? What are you showing? What is he showing?
A fabulous frame with a cornucopia, and there's a photo in it.
Oh, you know what it is? It's Obama's inauguration. And Andre and I went to Obama's inauguration in DC, and Nancy Pelosi, who had asked me to introduce her to the Democratic lunch, gave us wonderful seat on the balcony of the Capitol. And it was very, very, very cold. And Andre and I were both wearing ski clothes. I was wearing ski clothes. And it was a very special moment. Yeah. And there were millions of people in the street, and there were no police, and it was safe. And it was an incredible moment of America and of American dream. The first Black president, Barack Obama.
And Diane gave me that frame, and that picture's on my desk. I keep it up right now. That's why I showed it. And Diane says I was famous because we were walking up to the Capitol to go have some croissant with Nancy Pelosi. And people were stopping me on the street. Diane, she couldn't believe this. Andre, look at them, want to take your picture. And some of them were Kennedy children. And people were stopping me as we were going into the Capitol. It was so impressive. That was one of our best days ever.
Yeah. It was the most beautiful day. Yeah.
Beautiful day. Now look what we have, a second impeachment.
And you see, the thing is that I to be there with Andre was very symbolic for me too.
Yes,
because
yes.
Andre was my first Black friend.
See.
I mean, very intimate friend.
Thank you so much. Now, I wanted to say that, Stefan, when you had me in AGO the last time, and we had that film, they showed the documentary.
Yeah.
Well, one of the students I called on stage has written his thesis, his master's degree thesis on me.
Wow.
His name is Jason Cyrus.
Fantastic.
And he sent it to me. And he got his master's degree on my work at Vogue.
It's important work, Andre.
Isn't it amazing? Because he made such an effort to be dressed that day, and I called him on stage.
Yeah.
The way he was dressed. He was wearing a silk robe, a caftan, a silk kimono, and he wrote his thesis in some University of Toronto or someplace. I know. I have it on my table downstairs.
That's an important university.
Andre is a role model to a lot of people. He is and if you saw the documentary, that documentary of his is so, I mean, I know him so well. I know every facet, everything. And it's so moving and it's so wonderful. And he really broke a lot of glass ceilings. Can we say that? Yes. I mean, he really lived his dream, really. And frontally, and in coming to New York and working for Savannah and Andy Warhol and become, this big editor in Vogue, and then going to Paris. I mean, he had the most stellar life he could have possibly ever wished.
And you too. And she has Warhol.
And now we are just two old wise people.
Oh, wise.
There's
people.
That's okay.
I just really admire your guys' friendship. It's been, 50 years.
We're very close friends.
Fantastic. And I just want to thank you both for sharing your knowledge and your experience about Studio 54. I have to say that there were over 150 questions, so I've got to really apologize that
don't apologize, please.
I haven't been able to get to them.
No, he's apologizing to the people who sent the questions.
To the people who had submitted their
questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but I just want to thank you both, and I really want to invite everybody to see Studio 54, and I will send
you a fantastic exhibit. I'm very impressed with the slideshow.
And once they open the border, we'll send a car and we'll pick you up.
And send me the book.
Okay, I'll send you the book.
And Diane, send me the book. Own it, please. Send me the book. Own it.
As soon as I have it.
All right, my dear.
I love you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And bye-bye, Canada.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Canada. Thank you, Cecil. Be well. Love you.